Welcome to Flashpoints. I'm Margaret Brennan, joined by Juan Zarate, CBS News Senior National Security Advisor. Good to talk to you again.
Likewise, Margaret.
We saw this announcement this week, something that has been implied for a long time, but is now quite over, and that is Al-Qaeda sees Syria as the next front in their war. Ayman al-Zawahiri made this announcement and said, come to Syria if you want to fight the Americans, if you want to carry out jihad. How significant is that?
I think it's significant from not only a strategic standpoint, but in terms of where the terrorist threat is headed. Because Al-Qaeda has now said the Levant, and in particular Syria, is a centerpiece. It's a battlefront against the West. It's also a battlefront against the Shia. Keep in mind, Al-Qaeda, the vanguard of a Sunni violent extremist movement, really doesn't like its Shia brethren much either.
And certainly Hezbollah moving in there in a significant way.
Exactly, and Assad. And so in some ways, the U.S. and Al-Qaeda have a common interest in seeing Assad fall. But Al-Qaeda has now said, with Ayman al-Zawahiri, remember, an Egyptian who has very much in focus this part of the world, has said, look, this is a strategically important fight. We can fight both the Shia and the Americans here. Let's put our forces and our energy there. And that, I think, is very important because it demonstrates where the center of gravity in the war on terror is shifted.
And in so many ways, the reasons expressed by the administration in this country for not getting involved is the fear of strengthening that terror threat by making America a target by getting involved militarily.
Right.
By not acting, are we getting to the same result?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've seen this train coming, unfortunately. All of the spillover effects, the rise of the extremists, the adaptations of the Al-Qaeda movement, which now has a social component to it as well as a militant component, spill over to allies like Jordan now having to house 500,000 refugees, instability in Turkey, now fighting in Golan, so there's threats to Israel. All of these spillover effects that we worried about are happening anyway. And so the criticism of our policy is, look, we've stayed on the sidelines because we've worried about the spillover effects, but we're getting the worst of all worlds. We're getting all the spillover effects. Al-Qaeda's there, Hezbollah's strengthened, Iran's playing, Russia's aggrandizing itself. And oh, by the way, Assad is still in power in Damascus and frankly doesn't look like he's going to be leaving anytime soon. And so this raises a huge, thorny policy question for the administration and its new national security team.
Well, this administration's national security team have said up to this point, the only option not on the table is military involvement. But they said, oh, we'll strengthen the opposition on the ground, but it's about a political transition. And this upcoming peace conference in Geneva may or may not be happening in July. But is it actually viable to sit down at a peace table when neither side wants to?
Yeah, you can't want it more than the parties who are in conflict. I mean, I think that's a sort of a basic rule of diplomacy. That said, it's never a bad idea to try to get people at the table. Sometimes it can be an action-forcing event. I think in this case, though, the timing and the messaging around this conference are really bad. One, it put Russia back in the driver's seat in terms of how things were going to proceed. And you've seen Putin pounding his chest. You've got warships off of the Russian warships off of the coast, missiles supporting Assad along with the Iranians and Hezbollah. So it's put Russia back in the center of things. You also have a revelation that the rebellion is fractured, right? They can't even get their delegation together.
Their political opposition.
Their political opposition, right? So it reveals sort of real problems on the rebellion side. And it also, and I think probably most importantly, it raises the question at a time when Assad is actually looks like he's winning, retaking the key city of Qusair, which was held by the rebels. It raises the question: okay, will Assad even negotiate? And does a political transition actually imagine Assad staying in power? And so, a fundamental question I think for Secretary Kerry and the new national security team is: can you live with Assad remaining in power? Because that's likely where the Russians want things to remain. And it's certainly what Assad wants and what he's fighting for. And so if that's not a solution, then the peace conference seems like it's just dead upon arrival.
A lot of skeptics, including State Department's Aaron Miller, recently left the administration just a few years ago, who said this is weakening the rebels and strengthening Assad.
Absolutely. And the point here, and you've seen this in Senator McCain's statements, our friends and allies in the region are looking for American leadership. And it doesn't mean you have to put boots on the ground, but it means that you have to commit politically to an end state that you want. And that may mean you do certain things that are hard, but it may also mean you enable others. I think we have sent very weak signals, and that has constrained what others can do. And I think that means we've been on the sidelines and we're seeing the worst of all solutions come to pass, unfortunately, in Damascus.
In the absence of American leadership, the public is rarely pro-intervention or willing to act. That was said by the new ambassador to the UN, Samantha Power, who's worked in this administration. We'll see if this new team can change the strategy or if they even want to.
Yeah, and we'll see if the human rights issues here, 80,000 people killed, 500,000 refugees in Jordan, and the death and destruction not ending anytime soon. Let's see if that animates Samantha Power's policymaking at the UN.
If there's a moral imperative. Juan, thank you very much.
Thank you, Margaret.
That's been Flashpoints. See you next time.